Welcome everybody to a very late Wine Wednesday with the Whisperer. I hope you have your wine and are in a great mood because I really do apologize we're so late. My guest had an emergency. I do have some footage to share, so it still will be an excellent Wine Wednesday, I hope. And I will be in the comments while the video of our pre-interview plays. And then hopefully Tanner will be joining us in the comments to answer questions. If not, I will supply his email so that you can ask him further questions. Hi, the Salty Reef. Hi, Annette. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining so late. Again, apologies, but very quickly I'm going to play this video. I've been sitting here drinking my Moscato. It was a sweet kind of night. I needed something sweet for the sadness because my guest had to bail, and totally understandable. I have stuff come up all the time, so love you, Tanner. Thank you for talking to me earlier, and thank you for trying to help with everything. But either way, I'm going to play the video really quickly, and then we'll come back for questions. I'll answer them the best that I can, and we'll just have a fun Wine Wednesday chit-chatting. Hope you got your Moscato and your Seahorse glass, because, yeah. All right, so here we go with Tanner Smith and his pipefish information. This video will be edited further and uploaded as a video because I had to scramble to do it, but it's still good, so I hope you enjoy it. We got the awesome Tanner Smith here. Tell me a little bit about your background and what inspired you to start keeping aquariums in the first place.
Okay, that's a good question. I guess ever since I was little, I had a fascination with critters in general, and I was very fortunate when I was little to be able to go to the beach. My family would take us to Myrtle Beach almost every summer, and ever since I was little, I loved to get in little tide, pull crabs and catch critters, and always try to bring stuff home. Of course, they die. And, had a lot of success with freshwater, and when I was in high school, I really got into keeping fish. I got into a lot of other things too. I had caiman crocodiles, I had birds, I just had all kinds of critters. I mostly had freshwater fish, and then when I was, I think maybe in my senior year in high school, I decided to take the plunge and try a saltwater tank. Well, that consisted of a 10-gallon tank with fish, 2 pieces of live rock, and a juvenile blue angel fish.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my very first tank. So I was very ignorant. I had no clue what I was doing. And needless to say, it ended in tragedy. I got straight with the saltwater and just stuck with the freshwater for a while. And then when I was in college, I just totally got done with tanks altogether. And in a nutshell, when I met my wife, which was 8 years ago, she encouraged me to go get a fish tank, and I had freshwater in my mind. And when we were at the local fish store, she started looking at the saltwater fish, and then she persuaded me that I didn't need a freshwater tank. I needed to do a saltwater tank.
Mm-hmm.
So started off with a 55 tank. The rest is history. Of course, I went through the many issues and just buying fish and putting them in the tank, and of course encountering all kinds of diseases.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned the hard way, and over time I got better at it and started researching more, and eventually it got me to where I am now. I really was focused on fish only tanks, slowly corals, fish and coral. I guess I kind of kept that going for probably 5 years or so. And then I'm a subscriber to Coral Magazine, and many articles about people breeding marine fish and rearing them in captivity. And I really was intrigued by this having doing that. And I saw an article about somebody that was breeding Bengal cardinals, and
oh, I bet that's Matt Peterson. Could it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and Matt is a guy I followed a whole lot when I got interested in breeding fish. And yeah, Matt is a tremendous influence on me, all the success that he's had. The steps really were I had no interest in breeding marine fish, and then as I started getting better keeping marine aquariums, I had an interest in it. And the Bengal Cardinals were the first fish I was able to breed. And once I saw the fruits of my labor, I got addicted to it. I said, well, what else can I rear?
Breeding it's very, you can't get enough of it. Once you do it, I'm the same way. I bred a couple of Erectus and was finally successful after all the work. And then I'm like, what else? Gimme. So
Exactly.
I completely understand. I have seen a lot of your YouTube, and so I knew a little bit about you doing freshwater and different fish. Tell me, just really quickly, tell me a little bit about the systems, some of the bigger systems that you keep. Like I saw on your YouTube, you have some huge systems, don't you?
Yeah. Uh, yeah, actually, I've got one I have not got it online yet, but it's a 900 gallon.
Wow.
It's a 900 gallon tank that I built out of plywood, and I've got most of the plumbing done. But it's something y'all can check out on YouTube on my channel.
I'll put a link in the description too.
Yeah, okay. So 900 gallon is one that I've got built. I have about 300 gallon fish only with a male and female pair of epaulet sharks, the Australian kind, and they have just reached sexual maturity, and I am waiting any day to see if I find any eggs. So
Awesome.
I'm really excited about that, and yeah, I've got a pair of queen angels in that tank. A bunch of my fish, I had more fish in there, but to reduce the bio load of that tank, I sold most of my fish, and they were mostly single fish. And so yeah, I've got a 300 gallon. I've got a 30 gallon reef tank. It's the only tank that has corals in it. I'm still intrigued by corals, but a 30 gallon is all, it satisfies me.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a 150 gallon angelfish rootstock tank. It's got a pair of purple mast angels. That Colby, he's the one that he was my supplier on that. So I've got an awesome pair of purple mast angels, a pair of Potter's angels, and a trio, a male and two female multi-bar angel in the Marshall Islands.
Wow.
And I love angelfish. It's funny when you get into this hobby, you really kind of find out what you really like and what you and what doesn't, because there's so much variety.
Right.
And most of my tanks right now consist of pipefish, angelfish, and a pair of epaulet sharks. So
which one's your favorite?
Yeah,
you can't do that, huh?
the angelfish tank, I guess if I had to pick one, is probably my favorite right now, because
Gotcha.
it's a tank that I can sit there and watch and just really enjoy, and to see if they're spawning, and to watch their little behaviors and their dances. And so that's the pursuit that I'm really working on, is breeding angelfish as well. But in that angelfish tank as well, I have my pipefish. So when I get new fish, especially new fish pairs, they go through a rigorous quarantine period, because I have learned many times the hard way of rushing that process. I had a horrible outbreak of marine velvet in that tank about 6 months ago. So I had to completely tear that tank down to 150 gallon, and had to treat all my fish over as an emergency situation. And I finally got it running, and right now it's beautiful.
So what made you start keeping pipefish? What was your first experience with pipefish? Did they just happen along, or what?
So I had this interest in breeding Bengal card or
Yes.
So the Bengal cardinals, had success. I got addicted, and I was like, well, what's the next species I could work with? A subscriber to Coral Magazine, and in 2011, I believe, is the year. But there was an article written by Teal Deuce, and it was his to breeding blue stripe pipefish, and I thought, well, that's really cool. they're cool looking fish, and I thought, well, I could try them. So I had several systems that had the perfect conditions for keeping these fish. Had lots of live rock. They were a very seasoned aquarium. So about seeking to buy a broodstock pair.
Mm-hmm.
I contacted a guy that's helped me before. His name is Greg Meyer from Blue Zoo Aquatics. I asked if provide me a male and female pair of blue stripe pipefish. So he set of blue stripes, quarantined them, acclimated them, put them in a sump. The thing about fish is, especially the blue stripes, is they're so small, so they can easily go over they can get sucked into a pump. So you got to be kind of strategic in how you keep them. So
Gotcha.
I had a 30-gallon sump. It was full of macroalgae. It was full of live rock, sand. So it was a perfect environment for them. So in a nutshell, I kept them for about a month, and I would look ever so often. I was looking every day, thinking, "Oh, is the male going to have eggs?" And it happened about a month after I acquired them. I noticed that the male was full of eggs, so I got really excited. I decided, okay, if I've got eggs, I kind of got to figure out how can I raise these things,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to figure out what can I feed these things if I'm able to actually breed them successfully and then capture the larvae. And so I really had to learn how to culture their first foods, that being copepods. And then if you're going to culture copepods, you have to feed them some type of phytoplankton.
Right.
So I had to learn how to do that, So I had to do those steps before I think I really started breeding a pipefish, or to even get a pair, honestly.
What are your basic recommendations? First of all, backing up just a little bit, what are your basic recommendations for keeping pipefish? Like you said, do you have to be careful? You had some weirs in place. You said seasoned. What do you have like a basic list of what you would suggest someone make sure they have if
Yeah,
they're? Go ahead.
great question. Yeah, so to be like species specific, blue stripe pipefish are probably the best candidates to start with, I believe. Knowing what I know now, you got to have some prerequisites, I guess, before you keep them successfully. And I think the biggest thing, like I said, smaller pipefish, they don't grow much more than about 2 inches, 2.5 max. And but they can go in every little nook and cranny possible. So first things first is, if you have an overflow to your tank or a pump in your tank, you got to make sure that they don't get stuck or sucked up into a pump, or they fall through the overflow. So you got to make sure that you have something in place that smart habit, or large enough for water to pass, but small enough to keep those pipefish from to a pump. So it's one of the obvious.
Did you use?
So
them in the sump. That's right. Okay.
The other chamber, of course, had my protein skimmer and all the mechanical filtration. Used was so there was an overflow that goes into that chamber. So I used like a real long sponge filter.
Got it.
And so yeah, the water could pass through, but the pipefish couldn't. So I use a sponge filter out there where the water overflows, and I didn't have any pumps in there or anything. It worked out really nice, but I had lots of live rock. I probably had, I don't know, I had probably 30 pounds of live rock, which was plenty for blue stripes. You just got to make sure you have enough surface area to have a good copepod population. I would recommend an inch bed just to keep, like I said, tons of surface area for those copepods to multiply.
Gotcha.
Wear out the copepods. I couldn't imagine how many they eat a day, but I'm sure it's hundreds. I'm sure it's hundreds a day, I would imagine.
Right. So the next thing is you have to be able to either culture your own foods or have a good supply, right?
Yeah. Well, you have to actually be able to culture your own foods if you're going to raise them. That's the key to raising them. You can't just use the Tisbit copepods, because because the fry are pelagic in nature. So they're constantly in the water column, and they need a copepod that's also in the water column.
Good
You
point.
can't have one that's the copepod that's more bethnic, like the Tisba. They're always in the glass or on rocks. And the fry at that point, they don't. They will when they settle, but they do not initially
Mm-hmm.
when they hatch. So you have to have a specific type of copepod that is free floating. So in doing that, I learned uh, by using the MBI site.
Right.
Yeah, that's where it all ties in is learning from others.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I'll kind of back up, but I'll dive right into what we're talking about.
Sure.
Is knowing that I was wanting to breed these pipefish. Um, I Googled a search, looking up breed them, and of course it brought up the MBI site, and I read an article by Jim Welsh,
Mm-hmm.
who he he has a long thread about how he did it, and the biggest thing at the time that I was starting is the culturing of a specific copepod called Parvocalanus,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a copepod that is suitable for rearing angelfish and mostly has small mouth. And so I said to myself, well, I've got to put this copepod. So I used a lot of the resources from the MBI site that people were at it. And of course, if you're going to culture phytoplankton,
Mm-hmm.
I learned how to culture the richest, most nutritious phytoplankton,
The ISO, is that?
Isochrysis. I learned how to do that first because, so there's obviously steps that I need to take in consideration. Because if I don't have isochrysis on hand, I'm not going to have copepods for very long.
Right.
Yeah, so I learned how to do that, and I used the MBA site to research how. And there's more than one way to skin a cat, so to speak.
Sure. Sure.
So most people were doing it methods, and I was trying to find the right method for me that I was comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to learn from jot notes down, and actually, fortunately, I'm relatively close to sustainable aquatics.
Ooh.
So they're about an hour and a half away from me. So I was able to actually get the Parvocalanus copepods and some algae cultures from them when I needed them. So I didn't have to worry about the shipping. People have issues with shipping the well because they
Mm-hmm.
require aeration mostly, and they're kind of hard to ship. So I would drive down there and get me some starter culture. After a while, probably about 5 or 6 attempts, I started sustaining
Nice.
the phytoplankton. So so I started really getting some confidence and thought, well, if I can get this food going, then the copepods will be easier, and they were. So culturing the Parvocalanus copepods were really easy. I had a lot of success with them. I only had like 1 or 2 crashes, but I'd keep 3 or 4 cultures going. So if one crashed, I could just split it and be totally fine.
That's a really good point to make, though, is that that's very, very good advice that you just gave without, and that if you're going to try to breed something like pipefish, make sure that not only do you know how to run these cultures, but also have backups. I know Chad Clayton mentioned it in my interview with him, is that it's always important with culturing to make sure you have backups for those crashes, because they're going to happen. And so basically what I'm hearing is that the most important thing is learning the phytoplankton and then making sure you have the live foods, and that's for the breeding. So just to recap, you've got, you said if you're going to keep pipefish, period, make sure that you have a way to cover up areas so that they don't get sucked into anything. Make sure you have plenty of surface area for copepods. Would you say that the culturing, excuse me, now I'm doing it. Would you say that the culturing is necessary to just keep pipefish, or could you get away with that? Because I know they don't eat frozen, right? I mean, they
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Yeah,
okay.
great question. Where I constantly now keep copepods and phytoplankton going, it's amazing what kind of flexibility you have with acquiring new pipefish. There's been times where if I know when I had the marine velvet outbreak, I had to quarantine my pipefish in a isolated 10-gallon tank with no live rock, no sand, nothing on hand. It was really beneficial to have those copepods ready, so I could just pour them in the tank and they'll just snick them in the water column, and I mean they were fine.
Hmm.
But if I did not have my copepods on hand, they probably wouldn't have well, they wouldn't have survived because I wouldn't have had enough copepods on a piece of live rock or something to offer them. Culturing has done me a lot of beneficial. It's been very beneficial because I dose them in tanks now. I mean, you have to split them ever so often, or you'll have a copepod um, explosion, a population explosion, and it'll cap off because they quit reproducing at when they reach a number
Density or
really
whatever.
deep. Yeah, right. And so I make sure I split them so that density is not it doesn't go over that threshold. Let's
Hmm.
say. Um, so yeah, I dose them constantly. And copepods they're really good for reef tanks to feed corals with.
Sure.
So yeah, I dose them all the time, and they're great to have on hand if you want to keep pipefish in general because and they're great for finicky feeders, for small fish, for fish that aren't eating well when you first acquire them. I always throw some copepods in there, and boom, they'll eat them like crazy. And there's just so many benefits to culturing copepods
And is
that
that you've got the erectus going well too, right? That's a side question. I'm just curious.
that's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
So and I wasn't given the I was given the erectus copepods. I was giving them apocyclops copepods.
Okay.
They're just a little bit larger than the parvocalanus, and I actually got those from Chad
Yeah.
and Chad Clay, and yeah, so they were actually snicking those, but I believe Dan implied that that would not be enough to sustain those seahorses, and I knew that, so I was crossing my fingers, hoping that they would start eating the mysis shrimp I offered, which they did, and the rest is history with that. They wear it out, and occasionally I will throw some copepods in their tank, and
Hmm.
they tear them up. They'll snick them all day long, but yeah,
That's
so
a really good thing to know because when I started off with captive bred by I'm sorry, seahorses, of course, and so I read all the old information, that was online. That's one of the reasons I do this is to try to put better information out there. But I was very afraid to give my seahorses any kind of live foods because I was so afraid they'd stop eating the frozen, and that's just not true. They won't. I mean, they'll eat both.
having live foods on hand, culturing your own copepods is has been tremendously beneficial to me, and
Gotcha.
yeah, and you have to do it if you're going to culture marine life. So
And you learned all of that. You got that basic uh, idea from the MBI website and Jim Welsh, right? That's awesome.
yeah, so I think it took Jim. I mean, I think it took him a while to actually have success. I think he started out with rotifers initially, and then I think he realized that was not a good first food. And I know some people were using baby brine shrimp initially, and I never tried any of those two methods. I didn't try them because I didn't. I just I knew having copepods. If I had copepods, then I knew that's the most nutritious, most beneficial food for them.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I raised all my pot fish exclusive copepods the entire time.
I'm just curious. Do they end up ever eating frozen, or do they
Yeah,
always stay on cooked pods?
well, it's funny because the adult blue stripe pair when I add mysis shrimp to the tank, they will try their best to snick it.
Oh,
They try so hard, but their mouths are so narrow that they just
gotcha.
can't really get it into them. So if you have if you have a supplier of real small mysis shrimp, then yeah, they can. And I've actually seen them. I've tried several different brands, but
So they
my
would.
company,
It's just the size that's the problem.
it's the
Gotcha.
size, yeah, the size, yeah. And my like the Jan's pipefish, your larger flagtail pipefish, yeah, they can snick mysis all day long.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
Walk me through your experience with breeding.
I realized when the male was carrying eggs, I started watching them every day. And the fourth day, that at nighttime is when he would release the fry. So that's when the hatch night would be. Was every 4 days at a tank temperature between 78 and 80 degrees.
Okay.
And if that temperature fluctuates, I guess any cooler, it may be 5 days before they hatch. But it's always been 4 days for me. Like I caught the larva initially, or the fry, whatever you want to call them, initially by turning off all the pumps, shining a light to the surface of the water,
Mm-hmm.
and the room has to be pitch black. And all that is needed is just a small LED light that will shine on the water, and the fry will make their way towards that beam of light. And what I use just a small, like a 1/4 inch air tubing, and just siphon the fry into a jar or I forget what I use exactly, but I siphon the fry one by one into a little collection container,
Mm-hmm.
and and then I got more efficient with that. So I'll endorse Chad Vossen on this because he came up with a design to capture larvae
Right.
using
Right.
yeah that collector that he created, and that made the process way more efficient. And I didn't have to sit there and tediously siphon fry out of a tank. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that wasn't a whole lot of fun, but and I didn't get many the first time. So to make a long story short, using the MBI site, having phytoplankton on hand, having copepods constantly when I needed them, that significantly cut the learning curve in half.
Mm-hmm. Is the MBI site, is that where you learned like about the collector and stuff like that, or did you see that on
Yeah,
Facebook or?
I did. I don't believe it. Yeah, pretty much everything that I learned that really got me to my first successful batch was all what I learned through the MBI site.
That's so cool.
And here's the great thing about that site is, you kind of you get to converse with people who use that site regularly, and then that leads to interactions with social media through Facebook that you actually befriend these people and you can share ideas. And now I have several people that I stay in contact with when I have questions, and they'll answer through Facebook Messenger or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes it more direct, but you get to know these people, and when you have a collective group of people who are kind of have the same passions, and it's amazing what you can learn. Everybody can learn together by everybody's different experiences with the same type of uh, um, uh, culture and fish. You can learn a whole lot of different things from different people based on their experiences. So that's what makes the MBI site so rich and so valuable, is because you have so many different ideas and
Yes.
inputs and the ways that people uh, are doing these things. So with Jim, it took Jim a long time or it seemed like relatively a long time to culture blue stripes, and he had to learn the hard way because he didn't have a lot of people to help him.
Right. He led the
No,
way for people like you to come in and do it lickety split.
exactly. So I'll give him a lot of credit, but I'll say this: I think it was my second attempt of capturing the fry, putting them in that little 2 gallon Chrysler like fish tank bowl thing that I had, and adding copepods and phytoplankton. Um, my second attempt that I actually raised 4 of them in adulthood. So, or 60 days post, that's kind of the that's the line that most people use at the NBI site. So, what I had read is that most people were using a Kreisel, that basically kept the fry in suspension and motion, a circular motion. So I tried that using it was like this oval. You can see it on my videos, but I used like this 2-gallon beta tank, and it's like an oval. It really wasn't the best setup. In fact, it technically got me success. I raised 4 that way, and it was about a month or about after I moved into our new home and got the basement fixed with all my systems. I actually used a black round tub. It's a 15-gallon tub.
Okay.
And that's where I actually started having a whole lot better success. And I was actually getting a whole lot better numbers. I mean, I was getting like 20 and 30 each batch, just taking the larva or the fry out of the tank at hatch night, and then having a fresh, having a large air stone with a heater, and a good, of course, I would dose this black round tub with phytoplankton. To see, one of the things when you are rearing fry in a tank is you want to have a background algae, and that's where the fry or the larvae can accurately home in on a copepod, a specific one in the water column, and they can have some depth perception is what that's for. So there's a attentiveness to the watercolor.
Actually, it's really cool to hear that you prefer your new setup. I mean, you have more success. That's a good point because I mean, just I had the same experience. I was trying the little bowls or the standalone tanks, and I'd get a couple to live, and then when I set up fry tubs, it was a game changer. So.
Right.
I mean, if somebody wanted to breed pipefish for real, not just be successful, you're saying, you said it's a 15-gallon black tub. Is it over a sump, or what's the setup?
But there was no sump. Now, mind you, I had to siphon the tank with a real small, I think I used like a 1/4-inch air tubing
Okay.
attached to a stick to siphon the bottom of the tank of any dead algae that would build up. But I basically have I think it was a 50-watt heater, and I had roughly 10 gallons of water in it, freshly made salt water with copepods. I had parvocalanus and the epocyclops copepods, just being constantly swirling around in there using the air stone. Add to the setup.
Yes.
So I had the heater, the air stone, of course, my copepods and the phytoplankton in the tank. But I also had a white, I think it's like a 12K LED, like a cheap little strip light.
Okay.
Little 12-volt LED strip light that I would use to simulate daytime.
Okay.
And then I had I think it's a 453 nanometer ultraviolet or blue. Not violet. It was a royal blue LED strip light. I mean, stuff that you can get online real easy. I think True Lumen makes them, and that would simulate more of like a lunar, a nighttime effect.
Okay.
And I would have, and I don't know. I guess the point with these fry is I want them to be continuously feeding, and even at nighttime. So I wanted to have a light on the tank, and so I simulated that using the royal blue LED.
Got it.
And that really worked well because especially the first night you get them, they really need to be eating. They need to get that nutrition going because their little yolk sac runs up really quickly. So they need light to see their the prey, their targets. So I say for the first night I used. So I think it was like 12. I think it was 14 hours of the day, the white LED I would keep on at night, and then um, I believe it was 10 hours for the blue, the royal blue LED light. That I think that was a lighting cycle that I used, and I just kept both lights on. One would be on the entire time, so it really got dark ever. I do probably 20%, 20 to 30% water changes every single day,
Okay.
and I didn't have a sump on these on this black round tub. Okay, so what I would do is I would just siphon the tank when needed,
Right.
and of course you have evaporation you're dealing with. So I
Mm-hmm.
actually had a 5-gallon bucket above the tank on a stand, and I would have it drip line into that tank. That
Gotcha.
basically I kind of would set it so that I think it about every week or so I'd have to put in 5 gallons of water, but it would drip basically about the same amount that was going out through evaporation or by splashing from the bubbles.
Gotcha.
Oh yeah, so I'd have 1 to 2 drop, about a drop every second is what the is how.
That's a really good point and really important to know because I remember seeing that on the MBI side. I think it was your one because you ended up doing that. I think it was on yours where I read that how important that was to make sure that you were compensating and not letting anything fluctuate. That it just
Yeah,
needed to remain stable, and so you basically did your own little auto top off. That's so cool.
and that's what makes the workshop, the MBI workshop, so valuable. Is you actually get to go meet these people and
Yes,
converse with them and talk to them and build relationships, and that pays dividends. And so I'm really excited about that, and I give so much credit to these people because I've learned from them and me successful. So in return, somebody can use what I've done and replicate that, and they can become successful, and it can get maybe get more efficient and easier, and
that is how we get. That's how we grow it in the hobby. Is that's how things get better. Is learning from each other. You're making an excellent point.
I think I don't think a lot of people like to admit it, but I think it's inevitable that there will be a day in time when um, wild caught fish and inverts and corals and stuff like that. It's so important to learn how to do this. Um,
Right.
you know, it, now then because it's inevitable one day it won't be available to us like it is now, and
Right.
as regulations and stuff are starting to turn up the heat and stuff. So that's why it's just so important, and people enjoy this hobby. That's why just starting off, you know that's why me just getting hooked with that first successful pair of Bengal cardinals has led to Pipefish, which has me thinking more into angelfish and other fish species that I enjoy keeping. And there's so many people working on it. The success stories are just incredible, especially over the past 3 or 4 years. And that's why the MBI conference is so incredible, because you learn the latest and greatest
Yes.
techniques that people are using to rear these animals. So it's really
Absolutely.
fascinating and something that I really enjoy, and it's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
I can't wait either. I'm so excited and to see everybody again, to hear what they're doing, what they're up to, the latest stuff. Because you're absolutely right. It's such a credit to them and to just people working together. Because I mean, I just agree completely with everything you just said. Very well put. Because sustainable collection is an issue, and we're getting better on different sides of things, and I hope it never goes away completely,
I do
but
too. I do
yeah,
too. I do too. But just
I know. You're right.
yeah, you can just see the handwriting on the wall. You just see it inevitably happen. I do at least, and
No,
I
I,
hope it.
I agree. And you're right. That's why people like you, taking up that first challenge of the the Cardinals, and becoming a breeder is so important. Thank you so much for coming on, Tanner, and I'm going to open this up for questions now. Tanner will either be with us or in the comments, but I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today and teaching us a little bit more about pipefish. So,
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. I love the show, and I look forward to seeing you at not Magna, but MBI at the
yeah.
conference. Excited about it. So, yeah, thank you.
And we're back. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Tanner will either be able to join when he has a moment. He had an emergency again, so he's not able to be here tonight, but we did pre-tape that video. And now we've got Dan and Lucy along to just kind of chit-chat and have our little Wine Wednesday for a moment. So if anyone wants to join, there's a link in the description, or I can email it. And Lucy and Dan, why don't you guys tell me, I'm sorry, let's start with Dan. Why don't you tell me what your experiences are with pipefish? Just, basic experiences. What do you think about raising them?
Well, my experience is actually quite limited with pipefish. I had most of the Florida species at one time, but I wasn't trying to raise them. I simply had them. And then I had the blue stripes, which I got from Jim Welch, and I raised a batch or two of those. And they were, to me, fairly simple. Started them off on copepods, then Artemia, and then the frozen myces. And I found that they were probably easier than seahorses to raise.
Yeah.
At least that species was.
Well, and that's the species that Tanner actually recommended for beginners, and that's the one that he had the most success with breeding. And he was telling me, we actually had a further discussion, which I was unable to edit into the video, but he was talking about how for some reason they're just easier to keep like in a reef tank, because with seahorse people tend to keep seahorses in a species only tank without other fish because of all the problems, whereas these pipefish seem much hardier for some reason. Any thoughts on that, either one of you? Lucy?
Sure.
What do you think?
Well, for one, most pipefish don't hitch like seahorses do.
Okay.
They swim around, so they're not as prone to having some of the issues that seahorses have by hitching to the wrong things. And if you look around, you'll see a lot of pipefish in reef tanks successfully where seahorses don't make it. Pipefish also seem to be able to swim better than seahorses do because they're more streamlined.
Gotcha. You know what was an interesting thing that I also was unable to edit into the video is that when I was watching one of Tanner's videos with the fry, very, very young, they actually look more like seahorses at first. They bend their heads, and for some reason as they grow, they flatten out. I just found that fascinating because they looked so much like little fry seahorses. So, but I agree with the streamlining and how they're just built better for a tank because they don't hitch. That makes perfect sense. For the audience, I will be editing the rest of the Tanner video so that you guys can hear his opinions on keeping pipe dragons in reef tanks. Pipefish in reef tanks, because he does think that it's very possible, and he actually does it himself. And so I will release that information in a little bit. But Amy asked, can you repeat which big interspecies, please? I'm not sure what that means. I can say, and I'm going to turn the volume down over here, but I can say that what he recommended were Dan, what are they called? Blue stripe? Blue stripes. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm editing audio here. Where's Craig when I need him? But he recommended blue stripes for beginners, and he was successful with the blue stripe breeding, and I think one other species. I'd have to go back and look, but Lucy, what's your experience with breeding pipefish? Did she go away?
Yeah, I'm here. So I have some experience with some Florida native species.
With which?
Some Florida native species like giant pipefish and Gulf pipefish.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's he. We were talking. Also, I keep telling you what we were talking about because I don't have him here, but we were talking about the fact that he is trying to get pipefish, from different areas of the world that are a little more exotic or whatnot. But it's interesting to know that pipefish, are all over. Why do you think, either one of you, Lucy first, why do you think that pipefish aren't more available as captive bred specimens on the market? Did that make sense? Okay, we'll go with Dan. Dan, why do you think captive bred pipefish are not more available on the market?
Lack of knowledge. Almost all of them that you see are wild caught, and there was actually a company down in Australia that was breeding several species at one time, but I don't know if they went under, if they sold, or what happened, but I think it was Mick Payne that was doing it. He had several species of pipefish that he was breeding successfully. And I think it mostly boils down to learning about each individual species, because they're all just a little bit different in terms of what needs to be done, how they carry the broods. They're just different.
Right.
Seahorses seem to really garner attention in terms of breeding, but you don't hear that many people trying to do the pipefish. And the few people that I know that have tried goes back quite a number of years, and back then nobody was successful breeding seahorses, much less pipefish.
Right. Yeah, and Tanner had mentioned that he thought he had heard of a commercial operation doing the pipefish also, but that he wasn't sure what happened to him either. And Sam said they shut down, couldn't sell. So maybe there's just not a market for them, which is, kind of sad because I see them popping up everywhere. So that's hard to believe, but
well, they were also doing seahorses besides pipefish, so that may have been a marketing issue, but also the economy was real bad at that time too.
Gotcha. So it could have just been the timing. That really sucks.
At some point, we will start doing pipefish, but it's the nice thing about pipefish is they have a smaller footprint than seahorses do.
Mm-hmm.
So, I do have an interest. It's a matter of time and dealing with everything else we're dealing with and getting the setups going. And, we're already doing 16-hour days. So it's
right.
Trying to fit them into the schedules is the problem.
Right. And I mean, the way that Tanner described it, the setup he was using, he did realize that the Kreisel method wasn't best, and he changed over to the tubs. But he made it sound pretty easy because he made his systems basically like a culture. He was basically culturing the copepods in the tank with the seahorses. The sea dragon, the pipefish, the pipefish fry, and it just worked for him. But there's so many different methods, and I don't know. I'm anxious for you to start doing it because I would like to try some pipefish, but I'm not capable of the conditioning and all the stuff that you guys do at that higher level, So,
well, the nice thing about the pipefish to me is that they do take a smaller footprint. From a sales perspective, you have a wider audience because they can go in reef tanks and tanks that seahorses cannot go into. So it's it's a great add-on in terms of what we do, and it would be nice if they were captive bred and could be mixed with seahorses without the issues that people have with the wild caught.
Right. Exactly. Hey, I'm excited. But and one of the things, actually, Dan, this is something you can speak to for sure, is that one of the things that Tanner did mention is he's trying to breed some other different species of pipefish, and he's also working on angelfish, but he mentioned the fact that his biggest issue currently is obtaining decent broodstock. You know, he said that aside from learning to culture, hello DM, I want to hear about your
Yep.
pipefish in a minute, but can you speak to that? Is it harder these days to get decent broodstock, as you know, with different seahorses? I thought things were getting better, so that kind of saddened me.
Well, you mean as far as seahorses or pipefish?
Well, just in general, he just made it. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but he was talking about pipefish, to be clear. But he was just saying anything. We were talking about the chain of custody and how any kind of shipping makes things harder. And he just said it's really hard to get anything that you have to ship. And of course, you can get erectus seahorses in locally or whatnot, but to get any other species, you have to ship them. He did mention that Colby is the one that got him some of his angelfish, but he said he's been looking for a certain species of pipefish forever and can't find it. And I just go ahead.
I'm not surprised. It's the same thing with seahorses. The problem is that when you're dealing with wild caught, you have to understand the whole method. And you've got a collector who collects them, and quite often it's very low tech. They drop them in buckets. You know, they're sitting in a boat all day long.
Right.
They go back into some type of a holding tank. They end up getting sold to some type of broker who then ships them to a wholesaler who sells them to a store. And there's a long chain of custody that with a lot of stress they go through.
Mm-hmm.
With seahorses, some species, the Barbary is a great example. You know, I ordered 20 of them just trying to get one pair of broodstock, and I mean, I was feeding live mice. I was doing everything underneath the sun trying to make them make it, and I couldn't get any to make it coming in wild caught. And it wasn't until I got a pair of captive bred out of Australia that I had any success at all. And pipefish are going to be very much susceptible to the same things that seahorses are, and in terms of stress and in terms of their immune system and what have you. And it always seems that whatever species you're looking for is a species you can't find at that particular time.
Is that not the truth? Oh my gosh! And I'm not even. I mean, I can't even imagine at your guys' level how hard that must be. Wow. Yeah.
Well, I've been on the lookout for H. Fisheri now for about 4 years.
Oh, jeez.
I had a pair that was breeding. They came in by accident on a shipment to a customer who didn't want them, who we did a trade. And they had 3 broods. All 3 broods were doing very well. And the only other person that had bred the species, as far as I know, is Karen Bertain over in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had a construction worker here who knocked a fan into the tank and didn't say anything. And by the time that I realized what had happened, I lost everything except for the male.
Oh.
And I had the male for 3 years, by himself and trying to get, a female. And even now, I've got everybody in the world looking to get me a pair of H. Fisheri, and no success,
That sucks. Kyle just mentioned, hi Kyle. Kyle just mentioned that he's looking for flag fins. That's the type, right? Blue stripe, Janus, multi-banded, banded, and yellow banded. Kyle, does that mean that you're going to breed them at Alyssa's, I always say this wrong, Seahorse Savvy? Did I say that right? Did I say that right, you guys? Is it Savvy Seahorse or Seahorse
I think
Savvy?
so.
I always say it wrong.
Seahorse Savvy.
I apologize. Okay, at Seahorse Savvy, because that would be nice. I know that I only see what goes on the internet, and I understand that actual sales are different than that, but I see a lot of people interested in the pipefish, especially now that, we're finding out that they can be kept in reef tanks, more easily. And I mean, to be clear, Tanner points out in his part of the video that they have to be, you know, the things have to be covered. You can't have the corals that you might want to have. You have to stick to softies and things like that. But, you know, it'd be cool to have pipefish that were conditioned and ready for reef tanks. That would just be really cool. So I'm curious, Kyle, if you are actually looking to breed them. And Kyle also, Dan also, Kyle asked, do you think there's a chance you could get any fishery with the ban in Hawaii? Is that the problem?
No, it's not the ban. It's they're a difficult species to find is the biggest problem. They're typically caught as bycatch or by accident, and you know they do show up in the stores in Hawaii periodically. But even when I've gone through store by store by store, finding a store that will get them and ship them is difficult. And several of the suppliers over there, you know, say, "Oh yeah, we can get them," and we get them from time to time. But you know, it's a matter of catching them at the right time, at the right point to where they'll send them to you.
Right.
It's, you know, the same thing with the Halonis. You know, I got lucky with the Halonis. I've got a pair of them, and they're producing. So it's a matter of patience sometimes. You know, there's been species I've wanted that I've waited for long times for that, you know, eventually got. Same thing, you know, I keep waiting on the hippocampus. That's another species I want to do.
Right. Now, aren't those... Actually, I won't get off topic. I'm not even going to ask that question because I'm not sure about the statement, so I'm gonna back up. But let's see. It's Seahorse Savvy for the record, folks. I apologize truly. I just get them mixed up because it's so savvy. I want to put it the word first, you know. But anyhow, well, I'm kind of looking to see if there's any other questions that we could possibly answer. Tanner is actually on the Facebook version of this live stream currently. So we will give his email at the end if you want to know more about his tanks or his experiences. And he is very sorry that he could not be here, but he is in the chat if you have any questions, folks. So give it a whirl. And in the meantime, you were talking about is it Halonis, Dan? Is that what you said, Halonis? Is that
Yeah,
how
the
you pronounce
Halonis.
Halonis?
Yeah.
Well,
A form of Cuda from Hawaii.
I was just going to mention that my form of, you know, the Cuda, because that's the species you tell me they were. They're doing amazing. I am making crazy videos. You'll be shocked. The orange one has turned like bright red and then back to orange, and it's the yellow one just gets more beautiful by the day. I love them.
Now those aren't Halonis.
I know. No, I said the Cuda.
Okay.
But
okay.
Because the last time I asked you the actual technical name, you said they're Cuda. So I said, okay, all righty, cool, they're Cuda. But the other thing is, and now I'm just rambling, guys. You know, it's Wine Wednesday, but I'm so super excited for MBI. And do you know Tanner's coming? He's coming, and so
cool.
we'll all be together and having tons of fun. And he was talking to me earlier about maybe some things that we could do during the meeting, and so I'm really getting excited for this because it's going to be very, very cool. Do you have your speech ready, Dan?
No.
Well, it's going to be awesome anyways. Go ahead.
I got most of it done, but it's, you know, it's one thing after another. I'm gonna have to sit down and get serious and you know, get on with it.
Right.
And Kyle's asking what pipefish I've worked with, and just the blue stripes, Kyle. That's the only species.
Sorry, folks, don't mean to have dead air, but I was reading the comments also. And Tanner lives in Virginia, Amy, in case you can't see it on Facebook. USA, Sam says, yes. And he has bred, let me think if I don't want to say it incorrectly. I believe he's bred 2 species of pipefish, and he's working on some more. And in case you did not see the clips of his videos, you should go check out his YouTube channel. I will put the link in the description when we're done, because he's breeding angelfish too. And he learned everything from the MBI, and he's just a great resource for information, and as is the MBI. So, hi Tina's Reef, how are you? I hope things are going well with you. Okay, sorry Amy, I'm just trying to do too many things, sorry. So what else? What else do we want to chat about, guys? Anything on the list? Where'd Lucy go?
Yonder.
Yonder. Okay. What are you drinking on tonight, Dan?
Doing a little bit of Modelo before I do my other meds.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, I do hope that all works out, because I know what that's like. The Salty Reef says, Kelly, just an FYI, I made a short video of the new 110-gallon reef tank build since the big move. The Seahorse videos are coming soon. Woo-wee! We need to collab, buddy. We need to collab, all right? But Tina is doing okay. Just nuts at her house right now, getting roof replaced. Lucy is still here, but in the comments. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right, well, Kyle, I don't know if you saw Dan, but Kyle, okay, you're answering him in the, well, I'm going to read it for the stream. Kyle asked, are they as aggressive as I hear they are, the blue stripes? Dan said, I didn't have a problem because mine were captive bred to start. Kyle, I will mention also that if you watch the beginning of this, and maybe ask Tanner also, who is, you know, not commercial, but a lower level, but very, very good, and a breeder. But he had tremendous success with blue stripes, and as I said, I was rushing to get this video done so that I could go live, but he talks quite a bit about the fact that they were not as aggressive as he had thought originally. Who's stirring tea? Anyways, okay. They are not as aggressive as he had been told and he had read. And he actually has them in with angelfish, and they all get along very well. He goes over the methods to do that. I'm sure you personally already know, but I will try to edit that video to show others. But yeah, so his experience was they were not as aggressive as he was told. So I'm not sure. Dan, you said you did keep the blue stripes, but what did you think, Dan?
The ones I had were captive bred, and there's a big difference between captive bred and wild caught. When, you know, captive bred are raised in proximity with a bunch of others, so they don't have the same aggressive, or didn't seem to have the same aggressiveness as the wild caught.
Gotcha. You mentioned in the Facebook chat that you used 5-gallon tanks for the pipefish. Can you tell me what you did? Oh.
I actually had them in a 15-gallon tank,
okay,
because that was what I had at the time.
Okay.
But before they were sent to me, they were being kept in 5-gallon tanks. That, if I understood correctly, that's what Jim was using.
Okay. Gotcha. And that is what Tanner used also. So sounds like 15 gallons works well. But I don't know. I'm just ready for you breeders to get some pipefish on the line, because I want some. I'm really anxious now that I've seen them and seen how pretty they are and what they can, you know, how hardy they are. Because a lot of people think that seahorses and pipefish are so difficult and they're so hard to keep, and they're just proven every day that they're not. And it is important to make sure that you can buy captive bred if you're able, and if not, get healthy broodstock. But in the video, Tanner mentions Colby and some other vendors that, you know, can work with you. So definitely good stuff. And I don't have much to say about pipefish. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just kind of winging it here, but
Well, to answer Kyle's question,
Yes, please.
my plan is to build a small rack system with 5-gallon glass tanks for the blue stripes. The other species of pipefish, I don't have any information on yet, so I don't know anything about the others. But based on what I've seen with the blue stripes, I think that you could very easily get away with small tanks. Um, they, they really were quite, to me, they were
I'm sorry, you said they were quite what?
quite easy to raise.
That's what Tanner said also. He said that unfortunately for Jim Welsh, who deserves much, much respect, and we've said that many times, he had to go through struggling through figuring everything out. But now that we know so much these days, it's much easier. Like Tanner was able to keep 4 successfully alive in the Chrysal system, and then he figured out the tubs were better, and he was able to keep 20 to 30 alive every time. So, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
yeah. So as we learn more. Go ahead.
Yeah, with the adults, I would probably not put more than one pair together in a tank, um, and I think that's probably why Jim was using the 5-gallon tanks. It was so he could keep the pairs separated. My understanding is the adults will attack each other if there's too many, especially with the wild close proximity.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, I believe you. I believe you. Um, Interesting. So did that, let's see. Okay, Tanner said he's bred them in 5 gallons as well. And he made clear a point that you breeders always make clear, and it's very important, that the culturing or ability to collect those first foods is so extremely important to the process. And a lot of times on this stream we get confused with talking about keeping seahorses or pipefish and breeding them. And so DM's Reef, if you are there, I saw you join the stream, and if you want to tell us how your pipefish is doing, I would love to hear it. Because I do understand, and I'm sure most people do, that there's a difference when you're talking about keeping versus breeding. A lot of people don't necessarily want to breed; they just want to keep them. And it's being proven every day, they're not as hard to keep as people think, and they can be kept in reef tanks. So I'd like to hear how yours is doing, but come in if you can. Let me know.
No, I'm here.
Okay, so how is your pipefish doing?
My pipefish is doing beautiful.
Yeah.
It's doing awesome. I still haven't fed them. My system that is underneath basically my sump is basically filled with macroalgae and caulerpa, uh, tons and tons of live rock. And then I also have another sump that's under there that is strictly just Chato and rubble, which has been up for 7-8 months underneath there. That has just been the copepods and all the different fauna that's in there has been growing. I did have a lot in my display refugium when I added him, but he did clear that out. I don't see him on the glass anymore. I don't, he's been doing a very good job at keeping up with them. So they are pretty hardy in my eyes. Now, whether or not different genuses are different is could be maybe a little bit harder than others, but the one that I have, I couldn't tell you what kind it is. Just a very light color.
I'm pretty sure you have a dragon face, but go ahead.
Yeah, it has like a little red tail. Like I said, I have not fed him. He's been in there going on 4 months, 3 months maybe, and I'm assuming the way my filtration system works is that more than half of the water goes back through my display refugium, and then it does like a stair effect, so that all that water goes back into the sump, and then part of it goes back up to the display, but then a lot of that goes back into the display refugium, like I've said before. And I think
Yes.
some of the copepods and the different types of fauna are making their way back up there, and that is what is keeping him hunting and feeding him because he is very, very thick as a pencil. And when I bought him, he was a baby. So he is growing quite fast, and he is not looking like he's starving by no means.
I absolutely love your story because it's such an inspiration. And so, and I know Reef Dudes has pipefish now and is trying some things. So I can't wait to see what he comes up with. But yeah, when in Tanner's video, he covers how to breed them, more to speak, um, and so it's different when you're keeping just one or two. And he actually makes that point. I may have cut it from the video, but he actually makes the point that if you're breeding seahorses, you have to have the cultures and keep the water tinted and etc. But if you're just keeping them, as long as you have a really super established tank, the thick sand bed, the rock, the biological filtration, and the established copepods, then you're going to get away with a lot more and be successful. And you're living proof. And I'm so glad you're here.
And I do also have Miracle Mud, 30 pounds in the display refugium.
Right.
I don't know if anybody else has used it or tried it.
I do.
Cruise. I like it.
Yeah.
It's made my plants grow very well, but it's also helped, I think, populate my copepods and amphipods and all that type of stuff. So I think whatever's in that, they like to maybe lay their eggs so that they can keep new generations going or so. I don't know, but that's also what I have in there, and it seems like that works.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for mentioning that, because you're absolutely right. And I forget to mention how much Miracle Mud could help a setup with pipefish. You're absolutely right. So, but I'm so glad to hear that he's doing well, and definitely keep updating us and letting us know what happens. And
yeah, I want to get more, but I'm afraid to get like another genus or a different species and then not have enough food and then starve this guy or starve both of them out of food. So right now I'm just playing it by ear, and I'm just letting it do its thing, and then eventually maybe if I have to, I might have to put a bigger system on the display refugium, make it a slightly bigger. I don't know, but I think right now it's like there is just enough food for them. Whether or not if there is more, I don't know, because this is all new to me.
right.
But I have that fear if I buy another one or put it in there that they might not have food. But like I said, I don't know how much food is actually making it back up there. But as far as me feeding him, I don't feed him at all.
Gotcha. What do you think about that, Dan? What would you say?
I'm sorry, I missed all of that. I had to step out for just a second and just came back.
Oh no, that's okay. I apologize for putting you on the spot. He was basically saying that he is worried about. He would like to get another pipefish. His pipefish has done very well because he uses Miracle Mud in the system, which helps with the laying of copepod eggs and whatnot, making more copepods. And he's been able to sustain the pipefish with merely just his extremely established tank with such a huge, diverse culture of copepods within it. It's not run out yet.
Right.
But
How big is the tank?
My system is the tank itself is 240 gallons, but then I have a 55-gallon reef sump underneath, 55-gallon tank with it's completely filled with live rock and macroalgae.
Right.
But I mean, when I say it's packed, it's completely packed. I don't have baffles or anything. It's just a sump. And then I have another 15-gallon sump next to that one. So I have like a stair effect. Okay, so my return pump is an M1 Ecotech M1. I have it teed off so that about 80% of that water that comes out of the sump, the 55, goes to the outside display refugium where my pipefish is, and I have Miracle Mud and some corals and stuff like that in there, which that overflows into a 15-gallon sump that is completely just rubble rock, like about an inch of rubble rock, and then it's all Chaeto. That overflows into the 55, and then it goes through all my live rock and macroalgae like caulerpa and stuff. and then it just repeats the process all over again. What I'm trying to get at is I got one pipefish in there, and I haven't fed him in over 4 months, and he's fat, healthy, he's growing
Right.
good. But I am assuming if I put another one in there, my fear is that am I sending enough fauna through my filter to that tank to withstand either another one or two? That's my biggest problem. I mean, because I don't want to like starve him because he's doing so good, and
Right.
I don't know how much he's eating. I don't. I mean, I'm assuming he eats like a seahorse, so they got to eat because he's always on the lookout, hunting and looking for food. So I do have a big system. My system, what you were getting at, is probably total volume of water, probably sitting around 330-ish, 325-ish gallons of true water. That's if you
Right.
were to take everything out of my.
I think it's a legitimate question, but I also think that based on what you're telling me, you probably get away with adding another one. There's going to be a point of how many you add to where that changes, but if he's fat and healthy and doing very well, you'll probably get away with one more. Then you'll have to wait and see how the two of them survive, and before you can consider adding any more than that. But
Right.
for most people, the typical person with a 30 to 55 gallon tank, I don't think they would be self-sustainable.
Yeah, because my other, like I said, my sumps that are underneath my system are strictly for Chato and Calerpa, and it's probably got about 60 to 75 pounds of live rock. But then it's strictly just volumes of water, because I have an external skimmer, but it's just volumes of water. And I mean, if I look underneath there, and I showed you guys, I have so much copepods, the little horseshoe-looking guys. I have billions and billions of them. Like it's ridiculous how many copepods I have. As far as all the other ones, I'm sure they're breeding too. So it's been doing. I've had it set up for probably 7 months now, 8 months, and it's just been nothing's eating them. You know what I mean? So they just keep repopulating.
Right. Well, your system's probably a little bit different than the average hobbyist system.
Sure.
From a captive breeder standpoint, what we are always interested in doing is training the animals to eat non-live foods so that people can keep them without having to have such an elaborate system or such a big system.
Right. No, I hear you. That would be awesome. I mean, I have been putting like hyacinth shrimp in there to see if he will look at it. He does show interest, but
he's got the pods.
yeah, he looks at it like he understands. He probably smells it. He's like, okay, I know it's something, but he's like,
I'm good.
He'll just let it blow right past him. Like he's not.
That's like offering a kid broccoli when he's got Kit Kat sitting in front of him.
Yes, thank you.
Right.
You know what? I'm going to agree with Dan, and I think Tanner said so, and I think Sam Banfield also mentioned that she would try another. She has a 40-gallon, and she has a mandarin and pipefish. Hers do eat frozen, but that's the thing, is that if you did start seeing a decrease in the pods and saw any thinning of the pipefish, then you could then try to supplement mysis or culture, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. I mean, the culture thing would be awesome because I'm always in for a challenge, and just it'd be cool to do because I feel like we're all like scientists here.
Yeah.
Just to try to make a miracle happen, so it makes everybody's life in the world that wants to do this a lot easier. Like you said before all the time, that you got to start somewhere.
Yes.
And you're gonna have hiccups in the road, and you're gonna, sacrifice a few. I hate to say it, but some animals have to be sacrificed to gain that longevity of success in this hobby. So I mean, I don't want to do that. I mean, these things are precious to me because I don't have cats or dogs. So my fish tank is my cat and dog. You know what I mean? Or my bird or whatever.
We're kindred spirits. I'm the same way. I don't have any fur babies, but I've got my fishies. I'm the same way. I got slime babies, but. Yeah, so no, I know your heart is in the right place, and I would definitely, try another, because you might get a pair and you might end up a breeder. Who knows,
Would you guys
And
do this then? Would you go with the same species or would you do a different species?
I personally would do the same species. Dan, go ahead.
Same.
Okay.
Okay.
Again, because you might get a pair, and because we've heard from Tanner that he never had any problems with mixing pipefish, but many people have. So you don't, if you can avoid it.
Right.
And the other thing is, if you're interested, sorry, I jiggled. If you're interested in learning more from people who've done it and people about culturing, really seriously, I'll put the link in the description. Also, you should join the MBI site. It's real. That's where Tanner got everything he learned, and he was able to successfully breed within 2 batches. Then figured out that he needed a better setup, and did it based on information you learned there. So definitely should join. It's free. You should join the MBI site. I'll put the link in there. But go ahead.
Right.
But yeah, I would add another one.
Yeah, I've been debating. I want to jump that. I want to jump to the next page of the book and try it, and just be like, come back to you guys like 7 months from now and be like, guess what? Still haven't fed them. They're both doing great. That'd be like a great ending of a book. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. And I want that for you
like Dan
too.
was saying, though, not very many people have this big of a system.
Right.
Not saying that. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that do, but on the average, a homeowner probably has anywhere from like a 40 to 100-gallon tank. They don't have that particular, 400 gallons or 300 plus gallon tank that they can. And then it basically, how did they get it set up? Like, I did all my stuff DIY. It's my thoughts and everything went into it.
Yeah, but the other thing is you've got a large area of where the copepods can reproduce without predation.
Yeah, no disturbing them, exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, I got a couple. Yeah, two huge tanks.
That's awesome. Well, you're gonna be our next breeder. I have a feeling. But just to mention the comments here, Sam is talking about her pipefish. So is Amy. They're both talking about freezing frozen copepods, cyclopods, if I said that correctly. And Sam talks about her pipefish chasing food. It seems like what it's coming down to is that pipefish are almost even maybe more likely to eat frozen as long as they can fit it in their mouth. And the problem is the size. And Dan, is there any kind of frozen food that would be sized for a pipefish that they would eat? Or no? Or you don't know?
They do sell frozen pods, and there's also cyclopes, and there's foods out there.
Gotcha.
Some of the stores may not carry them, but there are foods out there.
Gotcha. I mean, I know Chad Clayton is also very big on working on these things, so they probably have something in store and probably have some products that I should be mentioning. So I'm sorry, Chad, but yes, food right size. So anyhow, let me check Facebook really quick. Did you guys have anything else that?
And another thing, real quick.
Go ahead.
Not the while you're looking at Facebook. I know you guys were saying before, and me and you were talking, that we were kind of nervous about like bristleworms and stuff like that, because with that type of thing with seahorses, if they eat them, it could actually hurt them and harm. Now in this system, there is bristleworms. There's baby ones to all different kind. I see them all over the place. I mean, I got starfish like bristle stars and.
Really?
He's still here. I don't think he's eating them. I think he's, like Dan was saying, or I forget which one you guys, they are probably wild caught. So I think maybe it's in its instinct that he knows not to eat them, or.
Well, I think what happens is with seahorses is they're eating frozen food that's on the bottom, and it happens to be that bristleworm is going after the frozen food. So I think it's by
Oh, yeah.
accident. You know,
Oh, gotcha.
eating live pods, they're not likely to get a bristleworm.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Exactly. Okay. But like I was saying, I just jumped in. I was like, because I see him in there all the time, and he just, I've seen him not even bat an eye. He don't even care if those are there. You know what I mean? Like, um, they're just there, I guess.
Right. Well, I'm trying to make these Wine Wednesdays a little bit shorter. So if anyone else has anything they do want to talk about, of course, please speak up, Lucy, anyone. But because Tanner was unable to actually attend, I played the video for half of it, and I just don't want them to go on and on forever. So, hoping that more people will watch and come join. So if anybody has anything else, if nobody has anything else, anybody? Okay. Well then, thank you guys so much for coming. And Tanner, we'll redo this and talk about your erectus and such sometime. Sorry I didn't get that in the video. And thank the rest of you for coming and joining me, whether online or in the chat. And anybody want to say goodbye? I never allow anybody else to say goodbye. Dan?
Good night.
Okay.
Good night.
That was great. I'll just crack a beer. All right.
Bye.
Go ahead. Sorry, Lucy. Go ahead.
Yeah, I said bye, guys.
Bye, guys. It's her comment. DM, you want to say goodbye?
Good night, everybody.
Peace out, he says. All right. Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. Next week, we'll be back with more guests. Please come and join us. Thank you for tonight. And cheers.
Good night.
Boop, boop, boop. Maybe.